Hey, what's up, Charles?
I'm doing fine, brother. Aloha.
We are live, bro. We are live. What a day today, man. It's like the stuff never ends, bro. The stuff.
Uh,
Oops, yeah, I almost forgot my thing over here. Um, yeah, it's getting hot and heavy, bro. The closer we get to D-Day,
yeah.
which oops. Uh, yeah, the closer we get to D-Day, which is what I call the October 15th,
Yeah.
the more action, the more activity, the more I think everybody's stressing out. Not just the people, but the all our leaders, our decision makers. Everybody getting called on their comments. Everybody being called on their decisions. And all we can do is try to gather as much information as we can and get them out to the public. I will say that. In fact, I forgot to go check on the put up that link for the subscription list. But anyway, interesting that they're moving forward. October 15. What was really interesting, I was watching the news tonight, and General Hara. I don't know if you saw the news, but General Hara said that they are evaluating the concept of having a second test 72 hours after they arrive in Hawaii. But he said that hasn't been approved and it is just a concept at this point. So maybe we're making some headway. Maybe our viewers, all of you that have gone out and shared or sent your letters, it might be working. I don't know. But, I will believe it when I see it. But General Howard did say that. I had to go back and watch it again. And he said that they are having discussions on that concept. And I'm hoping our guest tonight, Dr. Kapono Chong-Hanssen, is going to be able to enlighten
Certainly.
us because he was actually in that in a meeting today. So we'll see.
Well, it's put it this way. It's one of those things that we just have to go along with it until we can. I mean, we can keep our guard up, and what else can we do but sound the alarm, right?
Yep.
And like you said, I have to agree with you that we are making headway with some people who feel the need for speed, and that we are getting traction to some people. So I'm all happy.
Well, so am I. And I think um, after tonight and after tomorrow night, this week actually, this whole week is going to be pretty exciting with Dr. Chong Hansen tonight. Tomorrow we have Dr. Dvorak Jonathan. He's going to be on tomorrow night. Wednesday we have Dr. Jerome Kim from South Korea. Thursday we have Andrea Topola. She's going to be talking not only about COVID but also about the unemployment, her experiences driving down to unemployment to try to get some answers. It'll be very interesting what she has to say. Saturday, we're looking at Dr. Octor. We haven't gotten the confirmation yet, but I'm hoping to get confirmation in the next day or two. We also had an offer to bring on Dr. DeWolf Miller. He's one of the world's top epidemiologists in the world, and we're working on getting him on this week as well. So it's going to be a powerhouse week, ladies and gentlemen. The bottom line is this: we have a very short window to do what we need to do. And what we need to do is we need to make our voices heard. And I have started a website. I'll put it up real quick, and I'll post the links in again tonight. What you guys need to do really is to go on and this is the website that that I created just so that we can start a mailing list of warriors, man, of soldiers, of residents and citizens that are want to be engaged. So I'll post this up again. I know, my gosh, we got about 400 already on the list. So just go in there, put your name, your email, and then as soon as you do that, you will get an email from me with the support of safe tourism reopening, stop the unsafe one test. And in this document, there's all of the addresses of all of the leaders that you need to reach out to. There's even, and there's all from all the counties, all the mayors, the county councils, your representatives, your senators, um, telling you can write a letter to the editor or call into talk shows. And then there's suggested formats and actual sample emails for you to copy and paste and then get it off to the people that you need to get it off to. Very simple. This was done by a bunch of people that shared it with me. So all I did was put it together in a nice form. So it's very easy for you guys. And there are many of you that have done it. And thank you for sending me the copies of the emails that you're sending out to our leaders. I appreciate that. But it starts with this one here. And all it is, I'm not selling this email list. I'm not doing anything with this email list other than sending you guys out information. Now, there is an issue because I'm using an autoresponder. Lots of these emails are going into your spam folders. So if you signed up but didn't get an email, please check your spam folders, because in that automatic email that you will get, that's where the memo is. That's where that document is. If you haven't signed up, sign up tonight, and I'll get the link out there. If you did sign up and you didn't get the email, check your spam folder, your junk mail folder, and if you didn't, if it's not in there, shoot me a DM so I can get you the link for this document. It's critical. I want to try to get this list up to 10,000 people, but it's not going to happen unless we all share it and share it and share it. We're picking up people from all over the world, believe it or not, that care about this state. This is powerful stuff. So this is the deal. Sign up. We need your voice. We really do. And let's get this thing done. Awesome. That's going to be a very powerful tool. Says Mel, couldn't email sends at okay. Yeah, that's what was provided to me, Diane. I'm not sure why. You're not the first person that said that the email wasn't working. Could you please put the link in the comments? I will do that. I will do that. Once we start the process and we got the dialogue, I'll go ahead and put it up. Unless Charlie can take over real quick while I do that. I got to do it on my phone. That's why.
Yes.
Oh wait,
Okay.
no, I can. No, I can do it. Yeah, I can do it. Go ahead, Charles.
Anyway, I'd like to say aloha to you all. Welcome on this beautiful Monday night. Thank you so much for joining us. Um, Today has been a very, very interesting day. Some of you may or may not have seen some of the posts that we put up. First of all, I like to say how uh, I understand some of your frustrations because it feels as if we are being blamed again for all the debacle that has taken place with regards to opening up this state. Uh, it started off with the Civil Beat article this morning that wasn't very nice. But it's I'm gonna say this: if you ever come on the Mel and Charlie show and you make certain statements, you got to remember you made those statements because one of the things that we discovered on the Civil Beat article was that oh, the lieutenant governor said he wanted the state to open up back in July, but that the how should I put it that the citizens of this state psychologically was not ready for the tourists to come back. That's very harsh to say. I mean, unless if they've been unless he's been in your residence with you 24/7, that's not a nice thing to say. So good old brother Mel went to our archives of videos that we upload after each segment onto YouTube. Lo and behold, on August 12th, at the 36 minutes 10-second mark of that video, and you folks can see it too. Our guest, which is Lieutenant Josh Green, says that he's all in support. He's all in support of, but that he was the one that basically ordered the shutdown, or to have the shutdown remain in effect. So there's nobody else to blame but himself. And someone can make the argument that well, there are semantics. It's potato, potato. One of those situations there. But nevertheless, we didn't say it. we just sat back in the video show. We just sat back and watched him say it. So it's it's one of those things, and I got a lot of emails today from some of you on direct messaging and chat they were very bothered by the comment he made. It's I wanna brush it off if I could, but then that wouldn't be nice either. So I'm just gonna say this: politicians will do what politicians do, especially if they already occupy a seat. If that angers you, I'm going to ask you to really think about it. But if it angers you, and if the name should pop again for another seat, say in 2022, and it still bothers you, then you know what position to take when you cast your vote. Either you put a check mark by that name, or you move on to another name, whoever the opponent may be at that time for governor. And this doesn't only speak for the governorship; it also speaks for many of a lot of elected positions that you feel maybe you got brushed on the side, or maybe the individual has not thought of the best interest of the people that they represent. Then you have to make a hard decision. Okay, and like I told you before, I'm really evaluating a lot of my positions as well. So that's what happened to me today. So other than that, I hope the other thing I want to say, and people think I'm crazy, going over from Waimea to Lihui on the island of Kauai, it started raining this morning. It rained all the way up to Kalaheo, and then it dried up for a little while. But once you pass Hawaii, it started to rain again. And I was just smiling because I could see how it was keeping all the dust down. It was cooling down the place. So did some shopping, turned around, came back home to Waimea. And when you come up the crest by Kaumakani and you look out towards Niihau, it was so dark. You could hardly see in front of you, but it was a heavy downpour. And I smiled and smiled because I knew the land needed the ua, needed the rain to, to make everything green again because everything was turning brown. And boy, it was just the happiest feeling I had today. So I'm a happy camper.
Good for you. Good
Yeah.
for you. Yeah. So Dr. Kapono Chong-Hanssen, he was on our show in the past. And again, like I said, he as well as Dr. Dara O'Carroll was at the meeting today with the lieutenant governor and the committee. So we're like I said, hopefully he can enlighten us with what went on today. From what I understand, the lieutenant governor was very adamant about moving forward. They're saying that 80%, this one test system is going to catch 80% of the passengers, but 20% will get through. In other words, one out of every five infected passenger will get through. So they're working on making sure we have the hospital bed space and all of that. I think it's important, and if you go back to the Zoom meeting or the Facebook Live that we had a month ago with the Lieutenant Governor, I think he brings up a lot of concerns about bed space when our numbers were high. He's well aware of what can happen if we get another surge. We're still the numbers are still. Remember, today's Monday. So every Monday we celebrate the low numbers. Every Sunday and Monday we celebrate low numbers, but it's how it is, right? Because of the weekend. The real numbers to me, Tuesday, Wednesday is where you really start looking at the numbers.
But let me say, if I was a not too bright individual, like the not the brightest star in the galaxy, but I understood some numbers. What you're saying is that 80% will be filtered through. That means that 20% will go unfiltered, correct?
Right, 80%, 8 out of 10 infected passengers
Will get caught.
will be caught,
Okay, so it's
and
just
20% or 1 out of 5 will be.
yeah, but let's just look at it at the 20%. If we take Kauai, we look at 1,000 arriving passengers, right?
Mhm.
20% of 1,000 is what?
1,400.
No, 20% of 1,000.
Oh,
It's 200.
400. No, 20% of 1,000
Yeah,
is 200.
yeah. That's how much infected person gonna be here. Kauai, how many bed ICU beds we have? Should they get sick? Should they? I'm not saying they're going, but should they get sick? We get like what? 9 total, 10 total.
Oh, we get two people on. How come we get two? I don't know who that other one is, but I see Kapono in the waiting room. This is what concerns me. When this all started, they were talking about the single T. In fact, the quiet discussion group. I'm curious to hear what Dr. Chong-Hanssen is going to say. But I remember in the beginning, it was 70%. We would only be able to catch 30% with the pretest, and 70% would sneak through. Now, the Lieutenant Governor said 70. The most recent at the committee meeting today, they said 80. So let's bring Kapono in and let's get the true dope here. I don't know who that other person is.
Is there a name?
No, it just has a phone number. But hey, Doc.
Let's ask Kapono if he had anybody coming on with him.
But he just texted me. Okay, I'm using Zoom with my computer, but I don't have a mic, so I'm using my phone for audio. Okay, so I think I gotta probably bring the phone in too.
All right. I got the audio going. I got my computer going in case I need to share screen. Your guys' show has been it's been a good encouragement to get used to how to use Zoom and be better at it. So I thank you guys for that.
For some reason, there you go. There you go. Yeah, you were frozen. Your video was frozen there for a while, but now you're moving. You're good. We see life. You're seeing life.
Okay, good.
All right, so I'm just getting all of my stuff here all organized. I'm like a disc jockey over here. I got the screen here. I got the comments here. I got the share party here, or the watch party here, and I got my keyboard here. And the main
before we
thing
do
is
anything, let's share this whole thing right now.
Yeah.
Everybody,
okay.
Because we got a very important guest on tonight, so please share. Okay, there you go.
Listen up, everyone. Dr. Kapono Chong-Hanssen again has been on our show in the past. Very active, very smart, very intelligent. Doctor, I don't know what he's going to say tonight, but we're going to find out some statements, some true statements. And he's been involved with the committee, sharing his insights with the COVID committees at the state level. So, Doc, again, if you want to give a real quick introduction, where you at? You're still here on Kauai, right?
Of course. Yeah. This is my my main place to be. This is my area where I have the responsibility for me to take care, because I'm the medical director of the only community health center on the island. So I know I've mentioned this before. We're the safety net for all the uninsured, underinsured people for Kauai. We're also the Native Hawaiian Healthcare System office for the island. So that's pretty much the perspective I bring to it here. I like to share that mostly because I think, everybody has an angle, and it's important when you have all this different information coming out there to understand, where people are coming from. And I basically want people to understand I have no, I'm not going to profit. I have nothing to gain by doing COVID better or worse, other than that, I'm going to have to deal with the patients and the complications that happen if we have a lot of disease. And I'm going to have to deal with the social consequences of the economic things if we don't reopen or figure out a way to get our economy going. So, I feel invested no matter what happens. And that's the perspective I bring to it. I've been a member of kind of two different groups. We kind of have an ad hoc physician group that we formed with Dr. Berryman, at the early onset of this disease, or this pandemic, I should say. And so I kind of have that perspective. And then I also kind of joined on the COVID-19 discussion group that, first started promoting the two-step testing program. And I'm still involved actively in both. And recently just today, we had a meeting with several state senators and representative, mostly from Maui, and also the lieutenant governor was there. Uncle Charlie, we know each other pretty well. And so he just reached out to me today and asked if I could come on and help clarify some issues, and I can share things from the meeting as well. But I'm really here to just try to be a resource for you guys and for the community.
Well, thanks, Doc. I got to tell you, there's been a lot that's been going on, and just understand that we really here for the lay people, not the medical people, not the scientists and the experts. We here to provide that information to our viewers, again, who are lay people like myself and Charlie. And we have been taking a ride, or we've been on this roller coaster ride from day one, and a lot of information changes, understandably so. This is a new virus. It's a changing virus, and we understand that. But the thing that's difficult for us is how mindsets have changed. How we started off with the lockdown when we had 30 some odd active cases, and then as the cases grew, we started to open up, and then we kept pushing back trans-Pacific travel, and now we're opening trans-Pacific travel. We were told in the beginning that everybody was going to be required to take a test. If not, they couldn't get on the plane. The Fed said you cannot do that. Then we came back and said we're looking at a one test system, then a two test system. And now, as it stands, we're looking at a pre-departure test 72 hours before departure. They get to Hawaii and they can avoid quarantine. So we have heard from many experts, many experts, that they feel that is inadequate. When we first had this discussion, they figured between 70 and 80% of the people would squeak by, and of infected people would not be caught. Now that has actually flipped. What we're hearing today is 70 to 80% of the people will get caught with the 72-hour pre-test, and 20 to 30% of the people, the affected or infected passengers, will be able to sneak on by. So please bring us up to speed with what you know, and if you can touch on what happened at your committee meeting today, we'd love to hear it, sir.
Yeah. I think, I know Dara and I we've gotten pretty close now, Dr. O'Carroll. So I know he's shared a lot of data, and I'm trying not to, like you said, like my patients, I'm not trying to overwhelm you guys with numbers and data and give you a headache, but I think there are some relatively simple aspects that lay people can understand. So I'd like to share my screen and just show a slide here. Okay. Let's see. All right, you guys see this table now? Is that up for everybody?
Yeah, there we go. Beautiful.
Okay. So I adapted this from what Dr. Schwartz created. So Dr. Schwartz, in the COVID-19 discussion group, he's a University of Washington faculty member. And a lot of this data comes from him and his connections with the UW virology lab. So this is our connection to a very strong academic institution with the resources to find out information that we want to know. And this is kind of the data that led to us recommending the two-step testing in the beginning. So the first part to understand is that you have to think about the prevalence. The prevalence means the percentage of people that have COVID-19, where they're coming from. So that tells you, the county of Kauai is looking at about 1,000 passenger travelers a day. That's what they're trying to plan for. So if you're looking at 1,000 and they're coming from, let's just say Washington, so Seattle area or something like that, you have to look at the prevalence in that area during that time. Now, prevalence across the United States has changed a lot. I mean, it just fluctuates all the time. Same as in Hawaii. You get a surge, the prevalence can get a lot higher. People recover from COVID-19, it can go lower. So to give you a sense of the range, most of the United States is somewhere between like 0.8% and as high as 6%. New York at one point was estimated at 20%. So, I mean, there are these huge ranges in prevalence. So part of I think the maybe miscommunication or where people are getting different numbers is that it's difficult to estimate what prevalence we should expect from travelers coming to Hawaii. So when we first published this data, or we shouldn't say we published, sorry, we shared this data, it was working on a model of 1% prevalence. Later on, Washington got as high as 6%, and Dr. Schwartz, who developed this model, got concerned because he thought, man, I'm telling the politicians these are the numbers you should expect, but the number's actually going to be 6 times as much right now. So that changes a lot. He recently shared some hopeful data out of UW. They've been separating their testing populations into, they call it silos. So patients that are symptomatic, there are patients that were identified through contact tracing, and there are patients that were tested for travel. So they estimated that for the ones that were tested through travel, the prevalence is 0.5%. So sounds hopeful. I think the problem with that estimate, though, is that not all of our patients are going to get tested. And the people that get tested are a different subset of the population, probably more wealthy, have more access to testing, they're able to travel. And we have to remember that our plan is really kind of a hodgepodge mix. You don't have to get tested to get on the plane. You know, you can choose to face the quarantine that we all know is kind of unenforceable or difficult to enforce, even though Kauai has done a much better job than anyone else at the state at enforcing it. So I think 0.5% is optimistic. We were going with 2% lately. In the meeting today, Josh Green was, really took issue to that estimate, and I understand, where he's taking issue to it. The numbers he's been throwing out that we've heard or in the media too, are 1 in 300 something. I can't remember the exact number, 330. I've also heard him say 1 in 1,000. We think that is grossly underestimating it. The number about 1 in 300 or so comes from Alaska. I learned that today. So that's based on the testing that was done in Alaska. And I think, I just kind of have to argue that if you're looking at Alaska as the way to go, all you need to do is look at the numbers today and what happened after they reopened. It's not a pretty picture. So if you look at Alaska and think, oh, we should do what they're doing and base our plan based on their numbers, I think you have to admit that then you're looking to have a result like what Alaska has had, and it hasn't been good. So that was the kind of the first point of contention. What is the prevalence? And it's difficult to estimate what that really would be. Of course, our group would take the perspective that you should be conservative and try to plan for, a worse scenario, not the best case scenario of all the data options that you have. So that's the first step. Do either of you have questions about it? Do you get what I mean about prevalence and how it can be a tricky thing to estimate for our situation? Got him. Okay.
Yeah, got it. Sorry, because I muted myself, so it took a while to unmute. Yeah, no, I think this is excellent.
Okay, so then we go this day of the second testing. So this model is based on what would happen if you have one pre-travel test, or this really, to be completely honest, the way this is modeled is that you're tested on the day of travel. So I think you guys have probably seen some airports are offering testing at the airport. So this would most resemble someone who did not get pre-travel tested 72 hours before they got tested on the day of travel. So if you get tested on the day of travel and you're looking at a 0.5% prevalence, the number of infected people per 10,000 arrivals is 16. And then you go to 2%, it's 64. So that's kind of the range I think that we should be expecting. If we're looking at 1,000 arrivals only for Kauai, divide it by 10, and you get to the number that you're expecting, all right? Then we're looking at day 3. So what we have been told when we've had meetings with the mayor's office is, yes, there, especially in the media, there's the idea that is being put forth is that the mayors are being allowed to add whatever they want on top of the first test. We are being told by the mayor's office that they don't really feel that that's completely accurate. They feel that really the only option that will get approved by the governor is one additional test at 72 hours. So I'm not in politics. I'm not sure the truth of that. There's probably some workings that are happening between the state and the counties that I can't really comment on further. But the reason why I highlighted the number 3 is those are the numbers that you should expect if you're doing a second test on day 3. And as you can see, the numbers, they decrease, but I mean, not a whole lot. It's almost like cut in half. And And the reason why testing on day 3 doesn't work that well has to do with the whole incubation period. I remember the first time I went on, Dara and I were talking about that whole pre-symptomatic phase too. But the bottom line is once people get exposed to the virus, it takes at least 3 days, probably more like 3 to 4 days before a person will test positive on no matter how good the test is, no matter how good, because the virus just kind of sits there and lays low and then it explodes, usually day 5 or day 6. So that's the problem with having only a 3-day interval between the first and the second test. And that leads us to our first recommendation, where you can see down on the bottom, a second test at day 6. And I want to clarify that this is not a test at the day of travel plus a test on day 3 plus a test on day 6. This is just test with travel and a test on day 6. And as you can see, the numbers are just much lower. 3, 5, 10. That's the kind of numbers that we're looking at per day. You divide that by 10, for Kauai, but then you multiply by 30 to figure out how many people per month are going to escape detection, and they are going to be allowed to leave quarantine to do whatever they're going to do. But there's risk of that causing community spread and becoming a surge that we're not able to contain. So those are the numbers based on our modeling, and that came from Dr. Schwartz. I guess I think it can be kind of simple, but really, when you get down to the details, it's complex. So that's kind of the first thing I wanted to present. If you guys have questions about that, if you're seeing chat box questions, I'm happy to address them. But I think, it'd be good for people to wrap their minds around this. And Dara, or Dr. O'Carroll and I, and Dr. Schwartz, we made a primer that we were hoping would help politicians to understand. I think it's probably a little bit still dense with sort of medical academic information. But we'd like our politicians, or at least the people that are advising them, to be able to take this model, insert the different prevalence numbers, insert the different traveler numbers, insert the different day for your next test, and you can reasonably predict what kind of situation the island is going to be facing.
So let me ask you something there, Doc. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, got you.
Okay. So 72 hours prior, it basically gives us a negative of our positive. That's if a person will take a test, right? They're tested 72 hours prior to taking off to come to Hawaii. They'll get a result back saying you're negative or positive. So basically that's a net zero, the way I look at it, because if you're positive, you don't fly, right? If you're negative, you're coming to Hawaii. So it's zero. The 3 days prior to doesn't really mean nothing. What we're concerned about.
No, I would put the caveat that there's no, unless they did at the airport, nobody knows if you tested positive. So if you're asymptomatic and you tested positive as a traveler, you can throw away that test and take your, you probably already invested money. You can roll the dice with, getting caught in the airport or quarantine. Yeah,
so that's what I was getting at. So basically, if you get 3 days prior to, so just say, for all intents and purposes, you get a negative test. You land. Really, that's when your clock starts. That's the way I would look at it, because we're focusing on the second test, right?
Well, I think that the clock, really, if you want to look at safety, the clock starts when you start quarantine. So the problem with the 72-hour test is we can't reliably know what those people are going to do between the time they did their test and then when they arrive in Hawaii, and maybe there's another test, or who knows, or they go into quarantine. So they can be exposed, doing whatever activities they do, or in travel. That's also been estimated at 1 in 4,000 people to be infected during travel. I don't know if that's a really reliable number, but we know it's going to happen to some degree.
So I guess my question is, because we talked about it the other night, is when you're in that plane, the airlines will not be obligated to separate positive from negative. So you can be sitting right next to somebody who's asymptomatic. So basically, because you got that get out of jail card free when you take the test and you're negative, you could be then a carrier at that point and not even know it.
Sure. Yeah, pre-symptomatic even, and you could be infectious. Yes, that's the main concern with any one test.
Right.
Any single test, yeah.
So you're moving forward now. So day 0, I mean, you look at day of arrival and you're pushing it out forward now. Okay. If we look at those numbers, we know from the early on get-go when this virus came to our shores here on Kauai, it was all about the contact tracing and how you found out where the darn thing went. And nobody really knows how, let's take Honolulu because there are much larger numbers. Nobody really knows when you're talking about 4,000 tests, 4,000 cases, right? Positive cases. It's always been the contention like, hey, did you follow, was it traced well enough to follow it all the way where it needed to get to find out where its origin? And what we've said all along is no, they didn't do that. It's always always been mystery. So whether you get one or two, low numbers of one or two in that plane, and you got that window of maybe a couple of days while they're on the ground, it now becomes a mystery after that, especially if they're in Waikiki, right? Because you got to think about hotel employees. You got to think about a lot of locals that rely on their jobs in Waikiki. So that's when, and as you know, a lot of jobs in Waikiki and hotels, you have a lot of Pacific Islanders, which was one of the biggest problems we had. So this is just a whole ball of mess that we see that's going to be potentially can become a big problem.
I agree. I guess, you look around the world and it's difficult to find a place who's done very well with this. It's just a really difficult issue. And I think last time I came on, I talked about, I think, of sort of 4 things. It's testing, I guess probably the border control or something is the way to look at it, but controlling how many cases enter the state. The next part has to do with quarantine. The next part has to do with contact tracing. And the next part has to do with social measures, so whether, your residents and the people behave in a way that will control the disease. I would say that right now, our testing plan is below average. Even places that were trying to do 2-step testing, like Tahiti was trying to do a second-step test on day 4, is a disaster. They're expecting 100,000 of their 280,000 people to have COVID by the end of the year. Quarantine, I would say, aside from Kauai, also disaster, or certainly below average as far as what we have. We haven't embraced any technology to help with the enforcement of quarantine. We've just now kind of started to look at quarantine hotels to try to, increase the efficacy, but we're not great with that either, and we can't pretend that we are. Contact tracing, same thing. We last time that was our big thing. It's like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that we are, we only had about a quarter of what the recommended number of contact tracers are on Oahu. And I think it's gotten better, but only recently. We just got a new DOH leader. I think it was earlier this month, if I remember correctly, Dr. Char. And we're all hopeful. We think she's going to be much better. But to think that she's going to be able to jump in and then have this thrust on her, so quickly within about a month, that's hard to understand. But we're not great at contact tracing so far. Hopefully we've gotten better. Our community health center, we trained 5 of us trained in contact tracing as well, in case we need to help out our district health office. But we can't claim that we're great as a state. I'm going to put in the caveat that I did see some, I would call it heroic contact tracing on Kauai to contain the Pacific Islander mini surge that we had. And I think if Oahu was able to deliver that same level of contact tracing, you'd have a better argument that we can handle this. Social measures, I guess it's hard to say. I think that's where maybe my optimism is that with leadership, I think we would be above average compared to the rest of the United States as far as our residents' willingness to go along with social measures. But I guess historically, and especially after our leaders made policies that allowed people to to have gatherings that probably were dangerous and made sort of some strange decisions about what they're allowing and what not to allow. I don't think we can say that we're great on social measures either. So, of those four things, there's no reason to believe or to have confidence that we're going to be essentially a COVID anomaly and be able to absorb this when so many other places have not been able to, and they've had better resources or at least a better plan in their minds. Maybe they didn't implement it well. But that's kind of my look at the situation. It's really hard to feel confident about what we're planning to do right now with the resources we have.
Well, I think one of my concerns is, the rate, your chart, the prevalence rate that you put, very optimistic or conservative, I should say, because we do have areas. It's not necessarily a state. They could be coming from a town, a county. They could be coming from a city that has a prevalence rate of 3%, 4%, 5%, 8%, which skews the numbers even further. That has always been my concern, is that if we're dealing with at a time where, Hawaii's prevalence rate was quite high, many states, Arizona, Utah, Texas, California, Southern California, and yet, look at the target, Hawaiian Airlines, United Airlines targeting San Francisco, LA airports, because that's the market. I didn't look what the prevalence rate in those areas are now, but that's the hub of the East Coast, the Midwest. All of the travelers that will be coming to Hawaii for vacation will more than likely be hubbing in LA or San Francisco. We don't know where these people are coming from. We won't know. So the number, if the average of everyone on that plane, the prevalence is 2%, okay, then we're looking at those numbers. But if you have a group of people coming from a specific city or a town that has a high prevalence rate, the numbers are going to be higher. And that is where I think, and then going to what you're saying about the one test, 3 days, what they do from when they take the test to arrive in Hawaii, my gosh, they could have gone anywhere, restaurant, bar, depending on where they live. If you look at the news, many states, like you just mentioned, as far as the social behavior, they fail miserably. And these guys could be picking up viruses either shortly before they took the test or after they took the test and come to Hawaii, and they're free as a bird when they get here. They'll be free to go and infect and expose our residents, our employees. And that is what I don't get, what I don't understand, because every medical expert we've spoken to have basically said the same thing. Dr. O'Carroll said, now is not the time, or we shouldn't be worrying about hurting people's feelings right now. Now is where we got to speak the truth. And our decision makers got to be really open to that. And they got to be objective when they make these types of decisions. So my concern is the prevalence. If we're getting passengers from a high prevalence area, we could be looking at some high numbers for Hawaii.
I agree. I mean, I think we have to also keep in mind that the destinations willing to accept Americans as travelers are getting slimmer and slimmer. So, the world is sort of looking at the United States as a COVID disaster, and they don't want to be a part of it. They don't want to accept travelers. So I think there's going to be more of maybe there's more of a feeling that people really, really want to get out, especially if there's a surge or, wildfires or these, this social unrest that's happening in different places. There's this election coming up. People want to get away and get a break, and their options are becoming slimmer. So Hawaii is becoming, kind of like their only option. And I was a little bit disturbed because I think that the lieutenant governor made the statement today that, well, he's made statements about this before about not wanting to be elitist, that we shouldn't be only looking at a smaller number of travelers that might want to stay longer, or they might want a longer respite from where they are. We've talked about remote working is becoming more of an option for a lot of people. So there might be travelers that want to come here and stay for a longer time, and essentially per traveler they spend more money So it helps the economy and we have less risk. So I guess I have to say I'm not really on board with the idea that Americans are entitled to vacations in Hawaii, especially not at this time. But it seems like that's kind of like the feeling, like we have to let them vacation here. And that's the only way to save our economy is by trying to get as many as we can again. So I agree with you, Mel. I mean, there's a big risk here. I have a hard time feeling confident that it's going to work out okay. And that's why we're trying to put a halt. Well, not a halt, just be more cautious. Now, I can't say I have a great handle of the economics, and that's where the politicians end up saying, hey, you guys don't understand how bad it's going to be if we don't get this stuff going. But really, we're saying that you should take a phased approach. Start off with safety. If you don't get enough tourists, that's the belief that you won't get enough people who want to travel and quarantine for 6 days and be released on the 7th with 2 tests. Well, theoretically, right now, the number we're getting want to quarantine for 14 days, unless you're admitting that that's a joke, that it's unenforceable. So you have to admit that, like if that's what you're going to argue. But right now, our number is 14 days. So you've cut that quarantine in half. I think there's a good chance there will be more travelers. If that's not enough from the state level, I have a lot of colleagues that we're working with in Maui. So I know at least a lot of us in Maui, and certainly on Kauai, where we've had, like I said, like this Kipuka, where we've had hardly any cases. My argument is we should be allowed to take the approach that we want to take. You might think we're not going to get enough tourists. Okay, well, we should wait and see. And if you wait and see and do it in a phased approach, you can also gather data. So you can gather, well, how much is the prevalence? You're going to gather data during that first, well, I say it has to be at least 2 weeks because that's a whole disease period. I think the more conservative thing would be a month. So at each month you evaluate and you move on. I think it's reasonable to think about it as a 2-step test. Day 0 and day 6 is phase 1. 2-step test, day 0, day 3 is phase 2. And a single pre-travel test is phase 3. But you have to prove that you can handle each one of those steps along the way. And I do want to mention the other thing is that you probably heard there are all these antigen tests, these cheaper tests that are going to be more widely available. They're coming on the market in the near future. Some of them might be produced in Hawaii, or we have connections to people in Hawaii that want to kind of like take care of our islands. And those can be administered more frequently and probably arrive at a similar safety prediction. And right now, Dr. Schwartz is working with his colleagues again to try to do an analytical model based on antigen testing. But a lot of the work that Dr. Mina has put out, this is a guy from Harvard, I think probably Dr. O'Carroll shared some of this, but they've modeled that thing out, and daily testing can be very effective under that model, maybe every other day. But you can overcome the decreased sensitivity is what it's called, but the decreased ability to detect the disease with antigen testing by doing them more often. So that's another approach that's coming in the near future. And so it just sort of lends to the idea why October 15th jumped to this plan that looks like it's doomed to fail when between now and January, we might have much better options. So it's smarter to use this time to be conservative, try to be safe, learn what you can, and maybe eventually we can arrive at the plan that they're proposing right now, but it's just not the time right now.
Well, I tell you, you said something that was very interesting. You talk about maybe the first and foremost to be safety. And I think, he was, I don't know if he was in the legislature at the time, but remember the G8 conference when Obama came here, right? The thing they had to guarantee the state of Hawaii is that Honolulu would be the safest place to have the conference. And if it wasn't going to be here, plain and simple. So what did they do? They took out all safety measures. That means that every single corridor, every single alley, every single side street in Waikiki, there was law enforcement. They had law enforcement in 1, 2, 3, and 4 rings going out to make it the most safest spot on the planet because of all the heads of state was coming to one place. Now, it's funny how the government can look at that as priority 1 to make sure to ensure the safety of everyone concerned. But when you come to something like this, it's Safety is
Yeah, I don't know. You know, I'm not involved. I can't comment on where their priorities are, but I think, you know, I understand that there's a need for economic stimulus. But a good example from Maui is they had I forgot what the show's called. They had a TV show, Temptation Island.
right.
Come over there. You know, so that's going to be a big.
Yeah, they went to the Ondas, and they Miskovich did the test protocols for them to make it safe.
So you look at what Hollywood made.
Yep.
It's much more similar to the 2-step 6 days apart. You know, I mean, like everybody that's really looking at safety is coming to similar conclusions. I mean, you can split hairs about 5 or 6 or 7, but no one's saying 1, and no one's really saying 1 and 3. I mean, it's just not really happening, you know. So those are other ideas, you know, other models that support this idea, you know, that if you really want to be safe, it needs to be more. But I think that also shows there are other ways to try to stimulate the economy rather than high volume tourism for short stays, which is essentially what I think that they're saying. Most people don't want to stay for 6 days or beyond 6 days, so they're not going to buy into that. I understand that, but I think that there's a lot of evidence that the tourism economy is changing worldwide. It's not strictly that Hawaii made this shutdown that has changed that market. And the people, you know, I'm not an economist, but the people that I cross in our groups, they kind of throw out those ideas too. They keep on reiterating this is going to change. In the long run, it's better for Hawaii to try to adapt and market itself differently. And if you can market yourself based on COVID safety right now, that's a huge value, and it's something that can benefit the economy. So we keep coming back to it. Just doesn't look good to throw that away right now. And furthermore, you know, at the state level, if that's your prerogative, fine. But why force the neighbor islands to do the same thing or pressure them to do something that does not look safe because you're presuming they won't be able to attract a different market? And so, specific to Kauai, I think really we have a good chance of sort of adapting to a new tourism market over here.
Well, you know, as far as October 15, I think that was just the pressure. You know, I think the governor had extended it more than he had liked. I think the pressure came down hard from the visitor industry. I mean, that's no secret. In fact, when Lieutenant Governor Josh Green was on our show about a month ago, I guess, maybe not even, maybe it was his last show. Yeah, it was his last show after he had changed his perspective on the test. And I asked him straight up, I said, you know, why don't we look at the second test? And he said, you know, if we go down that route, less people will come. So the priority at the state level is the tourism, to get the tourism back. And I understand that. I understand about the economy. But we also suggested a couple months ago that why don't we do the trial run with the inner island quarantine? Run a 2-test system for inner island. Let those tourists stay on the mainland and let them deal with their issues. We will focus on our inner island economy. If we can get people moving around our state, residents moving around our state, taking 2 tests, getting a quarantine-free stay at the neighbor islands, then let's see how that works. Run it for 2 cycles of the virus. I would say run it for 4 cycles of the virus for 60 days. And then you talk about collecting data. That's how you're going to collect the data. If after the first 2 cycles of the virus, we see a spike in the numbers, then we know we sure as hell ain't ready to open up for Trans-Pacific. If we kept the numbers down, then we can phase in the Trans-Pacific. But they went Trans-Pacific first, extended the quarantine for inter-island residents to the end of October and opening it up for the Trans-Pacific, completely backwards from what we thought would be a good idea. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of steps that could happen before, you know, that would be smart to happen before you implement what we're promoting October 15th. The first thing to me is just because Oahu has plateaued at a number of new cases lower than the peak does not mean we're good. You know, I mean, like Oahu is still a bad situation. So, I mean, that's the first thing to me. We haven't reopened schools. You know, I mean, that's another thing. And there are some economists that are kind of saying, hey, like reopening schools is more important than looking at hospital capacity. And I am kind of along those lines too. We're talking about trying to open a tourism economy so that people can get back to work, but it's kind of hard to work if your kids are at home and you need someone to watch them because they can't go to school. So, I mean, there's just a lot of other things, Mel. And so, yeah, it sounds premature. We have all these safety measures in place right now and have a surge that is plateauing but not done. And we're going to try to throw on some more risk. It just doesn't make sense right now. So I think the details could be worked out about what order you do it. I think Mayor Victorino was talking about some things along the lines of what you were saying about removing inter-island quarantine first, maybe, or and then doing the Trans-Pacific next. So there's a lot of more reasonable steps to take first. So I agree with you. It does feel like I don't know. It feels like a rush. I mean, to be honest, it feels almost like moths attracted to the light. Like they just can't keep on trying to go back to it. Can't keep going back to it, even though everything's saying that's dangerous. That's dangerous. Look what happened to the other moths. I mean, so I have a hard time understanding it. Other than that there's a lot of pressure economically. I do feel like I'm sympathetic to Josh Green, because in the beginning of this this pandemic, I would watch him, and I do feel like it seemed like he was fighting a battle on his own to try to get any testing. And he I think because he's put so much into it, it's hard to let go now. And I suspect there's probably other people being like, hey, you told us this was going to work. So what, you say it's not going to work now? I'm sympathetic to him from that standpoint, because today I could see the emotion behind what he was saying. He said something like, there wouldn't be any testing planned if I hadn't spoken up. And I agree with him. And I think he needs to get credit for that. But that doesn't mean that from the time when that seemed like a reasonable idea to now, that you shouldn't adapt and learn from what we've observed around the world and the changing setting of testing resources, contact tracing technology, all the things that have developed in the meantime.
I get a hard time, and I believe what you're saying, Kapono. I believe what you're saying. He had a rough time, but at the same token too, that cannot be the absolute, because, and the only reason why I say that is because if we were to come under war, right, and the general says, I fought really hard to get one tank, and I'm just going to resort to the fact I can only get one tank. No, we're going to get slaughtered. You either go back and get some more tanks. That's the bottom line. You don't settle for anything less, because how is it going to look if we just have a major breakout? What I'm worried about is our economy. Screw the economy, because I don't think we'll survive a third shutdown. That's the God's honest truth. I mean, we've been talking to business people that had no business having their business shut down in Honolulu, and a lot of it was targeted on Honolulu because we weren't feeling it here on Kauai as well as the other islands. But Honolulu, we're getting targeted because they felt, we got numbers so high, shut down, they blanketed. Nobody bothered to go look at the data. Now we realize, it was just released the other day when those numbers were just dramatically reduced, right? Released from the thousands down to maybe like 1,700. And it's because now they're on board. They got a better idea. They got a better handle. They want to produce better data so the decision makers can make better decisions. So my whole thing was, so are you telling me that all these businesses that went out of business, they went out of business because of bad data? Because that's what the decision makers were banking on. Because they were banking on the decision, the data they got, and that's how they made their process that, okay, we need to shut down. Well, I've said this once, I'll say it again. You get a breakout in Waianae, why go close down Hawaii Kaifo? Doesn't make sense. It's just repeated frustrating issues like that. But, I understand what you're saying about Josh. But at the same token, he threw himself out there, and I said, if you want to wear the big boy pants, you got to take what comes, we're all in this together. But yet, now on this committee that you folks have, well, from the administration side of it, are you able to tell, other than Dr. Char, if she's there or not. Is there any other medical doctor or someone that has some level of expertise that can sign off on what they're doing right now?
I think you'd have a hard time finding a doctor that would be willing to put their license on the line for this plan or take the personal liability for this plan.
Yeah.
I think you kind of have, I think that a lot of the Department of Health doctors, they feel like they have to work with what they're given. And if they're only given certain options, the best they can do is come up with the best plan with those limited options. And I have a ton of respect for Dr. Berryman. I've said that before, our district health officer here. I know the Maui folks feel similarly about Dr. Pang, who works over there. But that is the impression that I get, that they're sort of put in the position where, they can say what they think should happen. But if their leaders come back and tell them, well, we don't have access to that, so now what you going to do? Then they try to come up with a plan that's going to be the best possible plan under the limitations that they were given. But I think it'd be hard to find a doctor that would be willing to put their personal, liability on the line for this plan. I mean, and that's part of what, Dr. Schwartz was concerned about. He's like, man, we published this paper and the prevalence is rising, and I don't want this thing to like hit the fan and then people say Dr. Schwartz said it was going to be okay. So that was kind of his feeling. So I think you'd be hard pressed to find somebody who would endorse it in that way. I think a lot of them do understand what we're talking about, but they're being told from other people that the economics is a bigger factor. And we all, especially in public health, I think they also understand that there are other costs to this pandemic, and maybe at some point you have to like acknowledge those and try to let, less than completely safe things happen, because maybe that's going to be better economically. Maybe it's going to be better overall for mental health, although I think that's kind of a difficult argument to say what part of the pandemic is affecting, mental health. Is it the economic shutdown? Is it the social isolation of the shutdown that is necessitated by surges? Is it the grief from deaths from people who die that cause the worst mental health outcomes? Because for me right now, mostly what I'm seeing is anxiety, but people are generally not feeling suicidal. They're just really anxious, and I'm trying to kind of like calm them. And but I'd rather see that than, more cases of people that had someone die and they're feeling horrible about their kupuna that died alone, in a nursing home. I think, that's a big risk too. So I don't think that that's necessarily set. I think it's somewhat like a false paradigm that we keep on saying, oh, we got to keep opening up because that'll help mental health. I don't think we know that based on the evidence that we have.
I'm quite impressed, Doc, on your perception. You're learning politics 101, man. You just said something that struck me, where you said that these state medical personnel are given options. They're given 3 options, and they're taking the best of the 3, which is not the best option that's available. It's just the best option because of politics, because of policy, because of what the governor wants done and his cabinet. I mean, it's just you're pretty bright to pick up on that. In the legislative body, it was not uncommon for council members like myself to vote for amendments to a bill, and then when the main bill came to vote, we vote against the bill. I freaked out when Joanne Yukimura did that once. We did all these amendments, and we got to the bill, she voted against the bill. And I said, Joanne, why in the world would you spend all that time putting all these amendments together and then vote against the bill? And she says, Mel, it's a bad bill, but I'm going to do my best to make it the best that bad bill can be by taking out as much Opala as I can. And I learned that many years ago from Joanne, and that's true. So these doctors are put in a place, unlike you or Dr. O'Carroll or Dr. Miskovich or Tripkovsky, all of these doctors that have no direct affiliation with the state of Hawaii or a government, you're much more free to speak the truth. These medical personnel that's employed by the state, they're basically forced to stay within their lane, and that is what is happening. So it's quite, I mean, I understand, but I think at some point, as a medical expert or medical professional, you got to do the right thing. You got to do the right thing and stand up and say, I just, that's not going to work. People are going to die. People can get sick. And I just cannot, I cannot endorse that. And I think that's what we're not seeing. So we really do appreciate you guys. I know it's not easy for you private physicians to speak out, but I think it's important that people know the truth. And let the people decide what they believe is a more important thing to do. And we'll see.
Right. I agree. I mean, I think the thing that bothers me the most is that the public is being told that the mayors are being allowed to come up with whatever safety measure they like. And the impression that we're getting is that the state is really only giving them limited, well, essentially one option. And I think, from before when I guess I'm not saying I'm defending Josh Green, but, he's also, I feel collegiality with him as a doctor. And so I think that just because he spoke up, it's a little bit unfair to put all this blame on him. I mean, it really ends with Ige, right? I mean, Governor Ige is the one, who could step up and deal with this. And, he's got his style. I don't know him, but he seems to kind of try to just disappear and let other people kind of appear to be making the decisions. But it is him in the end, I believe.
I think he's not a doctor, okay? But this is what I think. If most of us have a conscience, so I think we're at a critical junction right now. And if he would have just maybe say, Josh, get in my office. At the time, Bruce Anderson, get in my office. Okay, tell my security guys, get me an expert on the line from John Hopkins, right? Something like that. Tell my security team, hey, keep the door shut. Nobody comes in or out. Just leave it shut. And for the next 8 hours or so, just bombard me with everything possible so I can get my head wrapped around this situation. Now, if you ask me, was that done? I will tell you right now, no. Because I think Ige is pretty perceptive enough to know that if you put his back against the wall and you throw valid information at him, he can make a reasonable judgment call. But it's just like it doesn't exist. So unless the person is brain dead, something happened, and that's what Mel and I, when we go through and we see all the different, like when we were bringing in the senators, the COVID committee people, right? Sometimes we get caught up in the discussion, but we're trying to see how these guys are thinking, what questions have been thrown at the administration, and everything seems like they threw all the right questions, but it's just like it went to the doorstep of the fifth floor where the governor's at, but it never made it through that door. That's what it seems like. So I think somebody as close as they are to the governor, I would hope that he would have someone's ear and they could actually discuss, but it has to be someone that's medically qualified, because that's what we're dealing with. Because, half the stuff we're talking about and what you've said earlier, it can be very, very dangerous. It can be very dangerous. I think right now some people might be looking at us and say, just open up the damn economy. I've been out of work. Okay, fine. I take the position, and I'm sorry, but if I could take it all back, I wish my brother was here, but he ain't. He was one of those statistics. You may be in that same predicament. Then how are you going to feel? How are you going to act? And that's what we're trying to say. I personally, people asked my wife today, Auntie Steph, how come your husband gives so much to this community? And she told him, because he just doesn't want to see anybody get hurt. Because I see I cried that night Mel brought on Russell Izumo from Kauai, who never knew he got the damn thing. until he woke up. I mean, what a feeling. You know, you just wake up one time, you go like, where the hell am I? And you got your whole, you lost all those days because of this damn virus. And that's what we're trying to tell these people. So now we're on that bubble, we're on that edge right now, opening up travel. We don't know where they're coming from. And I'm not saying that they're all bad people, but I say we're going to get a lot of innocent people that just don't know they're carrying the virus. And all we're trying to say is give us that safety net to say, hey, we can save your life by telling you you got the virus. You need to isolate. Maybe that's going to save your life. But if we don't do that, they're going to come to Hawaii, enjoy it, and one day drop at the beach when this virus takes a hold of their respiratory system, right? The thing is, they'll
Right.
never know. They'll never know until we bring it to their attention. And that's all we're saying. I think that's what you guys are trying to say. Let us bring this to someone's attention so not only the victim, but all of those around those victims can be safe. That's all.
Right. At the beginning of the pandemic, Dr. Berryman mentioned this, but she said, if this plays out like it's looking, we're all going to be touched by this pandemic. Someone close to us is gonna either have a bad complication or they're going to pass away. I'm starting to see that with my friends. I mean, I can name, well, my girlfriend knows 2 people from Oahu who already passed away. A good friend of mine, cousin, passed away on Oahu, and we've been touched lightly. I mean, Hawaii has been touched lightly so far in comparison to the rest of the United States. So it's going to affect us. I wanted to circle back a little bit to what you said about Governor Ige and why didn't he get some people to help him? I would suggest that, if I was in his position, I'd be reaching out to, not to the governor of Alaska, I'd be reaching out to the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Australia. What happened to the talk about the safe travel bubble between Japan, Korea, all these places that had low COVID, and that was going to be our way to safely reopen the economy? Well, what happened is we had a surge before we even let more travelers go in, and I haven't heard anybody talk about it since then. But I think it's interesting that that's gone by the wayside, and those are the people that you kind of want to learn from. What they have set up is just so much more comprehensive. I mean, it's night and day. On those 4 things that I was talking about, they're just, the travel testing, screening, quarantine hotels, tracking technology for contact tracing and social measures. They're on board. I mean, and New Zealand is actually the point where they don't have to do all the social measures once they get, when they've had the times where their disease is under control. So they're kind of like cutting that part out, which might help for their mental health. So you can see that being a positive outcome as well if we do this in a really well thought out way.
Well, first of all, the reason why you don't hear nothing about Japan and Korea is because they chose not to participate once we hit those spikes, and so that went down the toilet. You talked about New Zealand. New Zealand still has quarantine. I just saw the article. I posted the article today. One of them tested positive on the 3rd day of isolation. So they're testing post arrival. That guy tested positive. The other positive was a resident returning on a charter plane. 3 other passengers on that aircraft tested positive after they landed. So, I don't want this crap about the airplanes are safer than anywhere else. I mean, I don't want, it's a whole nother discussion. My point is this, and you're absolutely right. If we had, from the beginning, focused on those areas that were successful, like New Zealand and Korea and all of that, and built our COVID infrastructure in a way that was beneficial and safe, we would be in a much better place today. Period. We would have visitors in. We would be able to do that with the proper monitoring, but we didn't do that. We rolled the dice. We said, no worry, numbers going down. Then we get the surge. No worry, it's gonna go down. I just had one more question because you brought up the mayors. When you were talking about the meeting, I noticed something very peculiar when in the governor's last proclamation, that he's allowing the mayors to do their own testing protocol for inter-island passengers, not trans-Pacific. Has that changed? Is there a chance that the counties, based on what you know, I know Derek has applied for testing, but the way the proclamation is written, the governor, intentionally left out Trans-Pacific. Is there a chance that individual counties will be able to require a second test for Trans-Pacific?
The mayor's office, the people that I talked to there, they pointed out the exact same thing. They were kind of like, what do we do with this? So it seemed like it was a surprise to them that there would be this, it's kind of like a gaping loophole, so I think they're seeking clarification, and I'm not sure, how many flights we're anticipating are going to be direct to Kauai, in this new reopening. You probably know better than me. But my understanding is they haven't gotten clarification. So that's another aspect. They feel like they're only given the choice to offer one more test at 72 hours. And that sort of implies that they're only going to be able to do it for inter-island travel. So any of the people coming from direct flights, they can't do anything about it. I guess I was kind of hoping, that was just an oversight, but
yeah,
I don't know. It makes sense.
That ain't no oversight. I can honestly tell you. The problem is that in order for them to add Trans-Pacific, they would have to go do a whole new proclamation. I don't see that happening. So we did try to get Derek on the show. He's waiting. He's gonna wait before he gets until he gets the response from the governor's office, and then he'll come and share. But I think disingenuous is, and I know we got the little lecture about what was that Hawaiian term you used at the last time you were on?
Ipuka.
Kipuka.
Yeah.
But like Dr. O'Carroll said, man, we cannot be worried about hurting people's feelings. The bottom line is this: we gotta make sure our residents are safe, and by putting the residents of our state in a separate bucket, that's more difficult for them to travel around to see Ohana and to go to the doctor and to deal with families and your kids that have to go to another island for school. We're in a separate bucket that's going to require the mayors to have to go through another process, get approved. But these people that have no connection to the island other than paying for a $242 round trip, another $250 for a damn 15-minute test, they get to come here and roam free. Something is wrong with this picture. And I hope it was an oversight. I do not believe it was.
That's a great point. I hadn't thought about it like that. Like I said, I kind of was just like, gosh, that seems like a very bad oversight. But you're making a great point. I mean, it's hard to justify. And I think once you look about it that way, I'd imagine residents are not going to be happy with that. I think from a safety standpoint, every traveler should be essentially treated the same as far as the safety measures are taken. And it certainly should not be skewed towards making it easier for mainland travelers than inter-island travelers. That makes no sense from a safety standpoint either.
The reason all of this is kind of like debacled, and I want to use that word very gingerly, is only because of one thing and one thing only. If we had a better control of the breakouts on Oahu, right, as well as the Big Island and Maui, like how we do it over here on Kauai, then I think travel between inter-islands, you wouldn't have to worry about any testing. Okay, the testing should be done coming into the shores. But because we didn't get a handle on it once it landed on the shores in the state of Hawaii, that's why we got to go through all this extra precaution now. And all we're saying is, hey, you control it well, we can travel freely amongst islands. It shouldn't be a problem. It should not be a problem. But just right now, it's just because, for one reason or another, a person comes in, gets infected. We talked about this the other night, Mel and I. You're probably going to ask one guy, hey, who you came in contact? Okay, who you came in contact? And they just stop right there, bingo. Well, I think why we get upset is because as ex-cops, we'll keep on going until we know for sure that, hey, we're going to get on successful prosecution on this, because we vetted everything humanly possible. And you know, I don't know all the aspects of why you would stop at a certain contact, because maybe they're so out from the branch of the infection that probably, you know, it's watered down to the point that, you know, they're more than likely they're not going to be infected. I don't know that. But if you tell me go hunt for somebody, I'm going to keep on hunting everybody he came in contact with. And I think that's how a lot of people see it too.
You make a good point. I think you have to keep in mind, I mean, contact tracing has two aspects. It's sort of like going forward is the more important part. How do we make sure this person doesn't spread it more, you know, and find all the people quickly that they could have spread it to? And then there's a second part, where did this come from? You know, how did that person get infected that gets more to, you know, probably more traveler-associated cases. So it points out a thing that I sort of said is that, you know, the worse you do at contact tracing, the more it looks like community spread. If you do a great job at contact tracing, the more it's going to look like it's travel associated. So somewhat the numbers that we have depend on how good you are at contact tracing. So I think you make a good point there. I did want to mention, Mel, you know, you mentioned your friend Joanne, who I've worked with a lot, Joanne Yukimura. She just sent me a message, and she wanted me to, well, she's, you know, say what you will about her, but she is passionate about this issue, and she will not give up. So she wants to certainly get the word out that if this whole second test on day 6 and more safety measures appeals to you guys out in the audience, now's the time to email the governor, lieutenant governor, Mayor Kawakami, and, you know, tell them that you support that idea, or you're concerned about the opening, or whatever your prerogative. But now is the time to really hit them with that.
Perfect.
Well, I'm gonna, again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna share this real quick. This is the link that will take you to this website. This website I created. You'll get on a mailing list that your names and your email addresses will go nowhere. It's just for this drive, this crusade. Put your name. In fact, you don't even have to put your name. Put your email. You'll get an automated response with the memo. This memo makes it very, very convenient. It has all of the emails, all of the email addresses for the governor, the mayor, the lieutenant governor, your representatives, your senators, city councils of every county. It even has a sample email to the governor, lieutenant governor. You just copy and paste. There's a sample for your mayor, copy and paste, and get it out. Now, we got to get this. This is what's going to make the change, people. So I'll post the link again to this site in the comment section. Make sure you sign up for this. If you don't get an email right away, check your spam folder, your junk mail folder. And if you still don't get it, shoot me a link. Shoot me a private message, and I'll send you the link for the memo. But it's imperative that we build this list to thousands, so we can, when things come up, when changes happen, when updates, we can send it out to all of you at one time. So we just want to get that done. We want to get that done.
Hey, right on, Mel. And believe it or not, audience, we didn't just plan that right there. That just worked out. So good job. Thanks for putting that all in one place, Mel.
Well, you know, we have so many viewers. We have so many people. This thing has now spanned across the country into other countries. I'm getting the emails into our list. A lot of people care about this place. A lot of people are afraid that when this happens, if we don't be careful, people are going to die. We don't have the resources. Lieutenant Governor Josh Green was the biggest advocate for making sure that we kept the numbers down, so we didn't overrun our beds and our vents and our ICU units. So, and that's exactly what we're looking at if we don't be careful with this. So please, people, please help us. And I'm going to put it in the comments right now. Just hit that link and sign up. I promise you, we will not. I'm not selling this list. Once we win, I'm gonna dispose. You get a thank you email, the final thank you, and then I'll get rid of that list. I promise you. But it's important because they need to hear from all of us, thousands of us, not just a few hundred. Right now, we got over 473 people on that list, and we just started it yesterday. So share it as much as you can. You got to get it done. Hey, real quick, Doc, who was in that meeting today with you? Who all was there?
Yeah,
I'm
I
just
had to write
curious.
these down. They're mostly senators from Maui. So we have Keoho Kalole, Moriwaki. Gosh, now I think it was Keith Agaran. Is that the last
Oh
name
yeah,
of
yeah.
another one?
Agaran,
And
Keith
Tina
Agaran.
Wildberger, who is the representative. She was the one who kind of spearheaded setting it up. I might be wrong about that the third one that I said, but definitely there was Sharon Moriwaki, Jarrett Fiohokalole, and Representative Tina Wildberger, and then Josh Green.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, man, we went way beyond. It's almost 8:15, Doc. Charlie, anything you want to say, Doc, before we close out? Really appreciate you coming on, man.
I just want to thank you guys again for the opportunity. I hope we're getting good information out there. I still believe that Hawaii can be a key puka, and certainly Kauai can. And I believe in our residents. So I believe with better vision and better leadership, we can create a safer economy and reopen and get back to economic prosperity as well. But it needs to be more gradual than what we're planning.
Charles?
Well, as always, I'd like to thank our guests. Thanks, Kapono. Appreciate it very, very much for you to, uh, taking up the request so last minute. But I think it was important that someone who has the knowledge, especially the talk knowledge of what's going on now and what you're trying to do. I think it was. I wanted the people to get to hear what you had to say. To our viewers tonight, again, the bottom line is whatever we can bring forth to help educate and inform you, we're going to do that. Whether you want to take it to heart or whether you want to dispose of it, it's totally up to you. But we will continue to bring whatever information we can to help you make a better decision yourself. Because should nothing take place other than we just open up, like I said before, the best thing you can do is to take care of yourself. Keep that mask on. Make sure you sanitize whenever you can, social distance. Don't get involved with large gatherings. Try to avoid enclosed environments where there's a big crowd. Just stay away from all of that. If you can do that, at least you'll have a better chance of outrunning this virus. Okay? Because if it goes where nothing is going to change, you'll probably have to do that until such time a vaccine is found and proper treatment is made. So that's for all of you out there. Mel?
Thanks again, Doc. I know I apologize for the last minute. Thanks, Charlie, for hooking us up again. And it's always a pleasure, man. Local boy, you just doing it for the right reasons. I tell you, man, we cannot find anyone. We cannot find a soul outside of the government that would endorse a one test system, a 72-hour test system. They just do not exist. And tomorrow we have Dr. Jonathan Dworkin, and on Wednesday we'll have Dr. Jerome Kim from South Korea. It's going to be a powerful show, a powerful week. Thursday we'll have Andrea Tupola again, not only about COVID but talking about our unemployment mess. And then hopefully Mayor Derek gets his answer from the governor's office this week, and we can have him on on Friday. Hopefully Saturday we're trying to lock down Dr. Octor from Arizona, from Phoenix. That's gonna be another one, man. So again, like Charlie said, we just trying to put the information out. I still get hate mail from people saying we're fear mongering. Call it what you want. We just put the facts out there, man. The facts don't lie. Look at what New Zealand is doing and so forth, and we can be the model. We had an opportunity. We still have an opportunity to make this a safe destination. But I promise you this: if we do it wrong, if it doesn't work, the next lockdown, the next shutdown is gonna be bad. And I would have hoped that our leaders had that kind of sense that let's look further down the road, and we just gotta wait and see, Doc. Again, thank you so much, man. Appreciate it. Say hello to the girlfriend, your fiance, whatever, and tell them thank you for sharing you with us for the hour and almost hour and a half. We appreciate that. Guys, thanks again. You guys all stay safe. Wear the mask, social distance, wash your hands, and stop gathering in groups. The other thing, if you haven't taken your flu shot, please take your flu shot. If you don't believe in vaccines, that don't apply to you. But for those of you you want to help it out, hey, go get your flu shot. It's free. It's free, right, Doc?
Yeah. Well, pretty much. And if it's not free to you, then it's free at our clinic. So come to our clinic.
Yeah, I thought like you go to Walmart, you go to every stinking place you go now, they got longs, hey, free shot, free flu shot. So there's
give you like one kickback.
And yeah, they give you. My wife is a shopper. They give you back one little kickback to your thing. So no excuse. If you want to get the flu shot, go get it done before these two damn viruses collide. All right, people. Thank you. We love you guys. Tomorrow night, 7:00, Dr. Dworkin. We're gonna have a good time. You guys take care. Stay safe. God bless. Aloha.
Aloha.